Hi scholars, let's look at TEK 4.3G today. I can represent fractions and decimals to the tens or hundreds as distances from 0 on a number line. So on the TEK it says starting from 0. So on this side of my number line I'm going to just put a 0 right there. And on this end of the number line I'm going to put a 1. Now see the entire part, so I'll try to move my camera so you can see all of it. So if you have this number line here, then we know in the middle it's half. Now what does half really mean? When you look at half, you're saying that you have two pieces and this is one out of two pieces. So you could, we're used to seeing half shaded in or something like that. Like for example, we're used to looking at pictures like this, like half, 1 out of 2 are shaded in. But on a number line, it's kind of different because we're not shading anything. We're just trying to show that this is half. This is halfway on the number line. And so you're saying from here to here is half. So if I were to go from here all the way here, that's like saying 2 out of 2 pieces. Okay? And what I always tell my students is that when you're trying to see what your number line is going by, don't count the number of lines, count the number of spaces. So I'll show you in another number line that I'm about to make why it's important to do that. With half, it's kind of hard to tell, but with the next one, I'll show you. Okay, so let's look at this. Let's put a 0 here and a 1 here. And I'm going to just put a line here and a line here. Now suppose I was given a blank number line and I'm expected to label it. Okay, so what people normally do is they'll be like, there's 2 lines, so 1 half, 2 halves, whatever. But if you think about it, between 1 and 0 and 1, there's actually three spaces. This is space 1, space 2, space 3. So this is actually cut into thirds. So this would be known as 1/3, this would be known as 2/3, and this would be known as 3/3 or 1 whole. So if I were just given, told, what does this represent? I would look at, well, from 0 to here, that is like my space or my shaded in area. That would represent 1/3. When I go from here to here and I've reached that point, that is 1/3. If I go from here to here and I reach this point, I've crossed 2/3. And if I'm going from here all the way here, then I've crossed 3/3. It's just like looking at a picture. If you look at this as your finger, this is 0, this is 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. So if I am pointing to this part of my number line here, that's 1/3 crossed over, and so it's like 1/3 has been shaded in. So if I came here, then that's like 2/3 shaded in. If I came here, then that's like 3/3 shaded in. So let's do another one and talk about how to find how many spaces it's in. Okay, suppose I'm given this number line right here, and I'm asked to label it. So my first step would be to count the number of spaces. Remember, do not count the number of lines. Here's why. Let's count the number of spaces first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You count the number of spaces between 0 and 1, or 1 and 2, or 2 and 3, or whatever. You need to find one whole bar and count the number of spaces in between. So as you can see, I counted 5 spaces, 5 sections, so that's fifths. But a lot of people do this. They're like 1, 2, 3, 4, it's in fourths. So if you were to say, thinking it's in fourths, You're saying that's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. Oh, but wait a minute. This is supposed to be 4/4, this one hole right here, and you're saying that's 4/4. So that's why you don't count lines, you count spaces. So here is my number line correctly done. So you see 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/5. So here's a number line that I want you to count and figure out what it cut into, and I want you to touch each line and say out loud what that line represents. So just press pause and then press play when you're ready to check. So this was cut into eighths. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, 8/8. If you count the lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and say it's sevenths, that's not correct. So now I just turned my marker board over, and this marker board has lines already on there. So you can make it start from 0 and make 1 anywhere you want, or you can start at 3 and make 4 happen anywhere you want. You can work it any way. So I'm going to fill one out and talk to you about how to solve it. So suppose you get a question like this. The question wants to know, like, how much is exactly represented, like how much so-and-so jogged this much the first day, this much of a mile the first day, and this much of a mile on the second day. How much total did they run in the 2 days? So in order to do that, your first step is to find 0 to 1, okay? And you need to count the number of spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is cut into eighths. So then I need to label. That's 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and then this would be 8/8. Okay? So we have to assume, sorry, didn't realize there was a shine on here. We have to assume that this next part is also going to be in eighths. So this would be 1 and 1/8, 1 and 2/8, 1 and 3/8, 1 and 4/8, 1 and 5/8, 1 and 6/8, 1 and 7/8. And then if you call this 1 and 8/8, that's also 2, because 8/8 is one whole. So when you fill the whole thing out, then you can say the answer is 1 and 4/8. And your math problem would be 5/8 plus, and then this part is tricky. You don't want to say plus 1 and 4/8. That's actually your answer. You have to count this one on its own. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7/8. So 5/8 plus 7/8 equals 12/8. And so 12/8 is also 1 and 4/8. Okay, so I just made this question on the spur of the moment just so you can understand why it's important to fill out your entire number line. Now this is a very easy question. I want you to also know that you don't know how difficult the question can be on your class test or a state test or a class assignment. So I'm giving you a very, very low level question. I just want you to be aware that it can be tricky when it comes to number lines. I feel like this is a question that a lot of my students miss because you have to be very, very careful. So let's say they give you a blank number line and they tell you which of the following fractions best represents that x. So a lot of people will do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, it's the 7th line. You know, I'm just going to pick A and move on. But, like I told you in my other clips, your first step isn't to count where the x is. Your first step is to find from one hole to another hole and know that that's a whole fraction bar and count the spaces. So that's 7 spaces, 8, 9, 10 spaces. So A would be incorrect. Even though this is the 7th space, it's not the 7th space out of 12 spaces. So A is actually not going to work. Now B. This is the 7th space out of 10 spaces, but if you notice, is this starting from 0? No, it's starting from 4. So B would be incorrect because it's missing something right there. Now if you look at C, that sounds pretty promising, and then you look at D. D is almost correct, but again, it goes to the number of pieces. So as evidence, I'm going to put in 4 and 1/10, 4 and 2/10, 4 and 3/10, 4 and 4/10, 4 and 5/10, 4 and 6/10, 4 and 7/10, 4 and 8/10, 4 and 9/10. So really, really important that you fill out that number line. Let's look at another example. Okay, so let's look at this one. In this one, it's a blank number line, and it's more like in the middle of the number line that you have to figure out, not at the beginning. And then these are your answer choices, like which of these best represent X. So I always tell my kids, don't just start from here and count. You need to kind of look at what's going on here. Sometimes they might even do this and leave that blank. Okay? So if they leave that blank, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they might put, I'm just going to put a new answer choice here. They might even put that, 7 and 10/12. Okay? And they don't realize that, wait a minute, if this is 7 and 9, where's 8? So then you got to go back, like here's a spot, here's a spot, here's a spot, here's a spot. Go back and find where 8 would be, and that would be right there. But see, if you don't do that, and you're like, well, let's count from 7 to 9, not realizing you need to have 7 to 8 or 8 to 9. So if you do it this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, that's the 10th one out of 12. My answer is 7 and 10/12. That's actually incorrect because this is where 8 belongs. And so your answer is going to be very, very different. So between 7 and 8, you want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's cut in sixths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is also cut in sixths. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 4/6. It's between 8 and 9. So this is 8 and 4/6. So notice this would be my correct answer. Notice they put 4/5, 8 and 4/5 as an answer choice just in case somebody decides to count the lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they call that 4/5. So, someone might accidentally pick A, which is incorrect. And then 7 and 4/6, that's if they don't realize, it's after 8. And then B, sometimes a really random answer. So, as you can see, it's really, really important to fill out your number line and count the spaces. So I feel like number lines are really easy, and so I want you to do just this one last question. It's a challenge question, and I want you to decide which one best represents X. So press pause, and then press play when you're ready to check. Okay, so my first step is to find one hole to the next one hole. So if you notice, 9 to 11 doesn't work. You have to have 10 somewhere. In order to figure out 10, you have to find the middle. Sorry, technical difficulties. So actually, X is best represented by the letter C, which is the answer is 10. Now, just wanted to talk to you, what if X was over here? You would still have to do this center strategy because it goes from 9 to 11 and they left the middle part blank. So you'd have to find 10 regardless.